The Radical. Fundamental principles of freedom, rational self-interest, and individual rights. This is the Yaron Brook Show.
All right, everybody, welcome to Yaron Brook Show on this Tuesday, July 2nd, almost July 4th. We will do a special July 4th, I think. That'll be a fun show. All right, we got a full program today. There's a lot to talk about. Nothing massive in the news. There's no new war or anything like that, but just a lot of stuff, a lot of fallout continues from the Biden debate. A lot of fallout and debate continues from the Supreme Court rulings from yesterday. We'll talk about those. We'll talk about Putin, Panama, Pharma, Candace. I think this will be the last video I ever show of Candace. I think this will be it. I'll show you a video, and I think we'll stop there because I think this will just be it. It'll be enough. We'll be done. And more. MEI. I don't know if you know what MEI is. You'll discover what MEI is. MEI is the replacement for DEI. So we've got MEI. We'll talk about France, Bannon, and so on. All right. Let's see. Rob is going to hide his eyes when I show the video of Candace. It's short. I promise it's short. But, it's just too good not to show. It's just let's put a final But she isn't the left, as Cook says. She's not the left. So maybe she's good in our big tent. Maybe she's an ally. Maybe. We'll see. All right, let's start with Biden just quickly. Nothing really new. Every indication is he has no intention of resigning. He has every intention of continuing to run. I think there's panic among Democrats, but they don't know exactly what to do. They don't want to undermine him by being critical, and they don't want to. But they also realize that it's kind of a lost case, and they don't know how to navigate this. Real confusion. Democratic governors yesterday had a phone call that was organized by them, and with no aides, nobody, just to talk about this, and expressed a lot of concern about Biden's condition and health and situation. I think that if Biden quit, I think there are a variety of different people the Democrats could pick up on. And again, a lot of the vote in November is going to be an anti-Trump vote, so you don't really need as recognizable, if you will, as a name as Biden is, but they're running desperate, they're running frantic, it's a real problem. It's a real problem for them. But again, no indication Biden is going to quit. No indication anybody close to Biden is putting pressure. Rumors have it that while Obama publicly is supporting Biden, stating in the race, he's bad-mouthing him behind his back, which I think fits Obama's character. There's no leadership in the Democratic Party. There's nobody who can walk in there and say, you're fired. There's no leadership in the Republican Party either. Let's be clear, right? We know where the leadership in the Republican Party rests. It's 100% Trump. Somebody should have fired Trump after January 6th and not allowed him back into the Republican Party. But that's, so both parties, in my view, completely and utterly dysfunctional. Both parties are now in the hands of the worst elements within the party. So we'll wait and see. There's kind of a watch going on to see what happens. Polls are coming out. The polls just show Biden in worse and worse and worse shape. So every poll, the polls are pretty definitive in terms of Biden losing the popular vote to Trump, which would be huge. Never mind losing the Electoral College to Trump. I think if Kennedy is actually running, and if he's listed in every state, Biden could fall to like under 40% of the vote. Kennedy would take a lot of people who don't want to vote for Trump, but who can't vote for Biden, for a senile guy for president, and they'll vote for Kennedy. They'll vote for a guy who had his brain eaten by a parasite, but not for Biden. But so anyway, I think for Democrats, very depressing, and really a sign of how little they ultimately care about the country, or how cowardly they are. I think basically at this point they are cowards, and because if they had any kind of leadership, if they had any kind of courage, they would fire Biden. They would just go in there and say, "You're gone. It's done." All right. A lot of debate out there. We'll keep watching the Biden saga, of course, and you'll know, I'm sure, it'll make front page news if anything dramatic changes. A lot is being discussed about the Supreme Court decisions, and particularly the immunity case, the immunity case yesterday, and the immunity case is problematic because it retains a certain ambiguity that I think people are struggling to figure out. It basically creates three categories of presidential actions, of actions of a president, and treats them differently. One is kind of core functions of the president as president, for which the president has immunity. And to give you a sense of some of the challenges here, is one of those is pardons, right? Presidential pardons. It's in the Constitution. Presidents can pardon people. But then if he's immune for the presidential pardon, what if he gets bribed in order to pardon somebody? Could he be prosecuted for that? Would that constitute a presidential action that gets full immunity? And the fascinating thing is, you can poll constitutional or Supreme Court experts right now and ask them whether the Supreme Court decision yesterday constitutes bribery. Does it give 100% immunity for bribery? Does it not? And they don't know. And that should be pretty clear. It should be pretty clear. Pretty clear. You know, once the Supreme Court decides these things, it should be pretty clear where it falls. The middle ground is there's a middle ground, a presidential action, but where, you know, you'd have to decide if the particular conduct was right as part of his role as president. Was it essential for that? So here there's ambiguity. You'd actually have to do a finding of fact and separate out private activity from his role as president, figure that out exactly, and that's the most ambiguous, and that would be left to the courts to decide. And then the third is the president acting as a private agent, as a private citizen, and there they have no immunity at all. And again, that middle ground is the most difficult part of all of it. And again, the scholars are out there, and they can't figure out exactly what constitutes what and how this would be interpreted. And the courts are going to have to play this out, and this creates enormous confusion. If the president, for example, assigns a SEAL Team 6 to go kill a political opponent, is that part of his presidential function as commander-in-chief? But he's doing it for maybe some other motive that isn't related to the good of the country, and therefore, is it now a private action, or is it something in between? And how should the courts? Anyway, lots of ambiguity, lots of challenges, and it's going to be interesting to see how, in the end, the courts resolve it. In the meantime, what this means primarily for Trump is a delay. We said this yesterday, a massive delay in the various court cases against him, which basically will probably get him off the hook, even though he shouldn't. Now, some of the charges against Trump are pretty clearly what seems, according to the Supreme Court at least, pretty clearly private actions. And therefore, lawsuits should be able to go ahead. The criminal prosecution should be able to go ahead. For example, this is Justice Barrett in her, I think it was a concurring opinion. She writes, this analysis is unnecessary, that analysis for things that are not clear whether it's official duty or not, right? The ambiguous middle. This analysis is unnecessary for allegations involving the president's private conduct, because the Constitution offers no protection from prosecution of acts taken in private capacity. All right, that's pretty clear. She continues, sorting private from official conduct sometimes will be difficult, but not always. Take the president's alleged attempt to organize alternative slates of electors. This is Trump. In my view, that conduct is private and therefore not entitled to protection. The Constitution vests power to appoint presidential electors in the states. And while Congress has a limited role in the process, the president has none. In short, a president has no legal authority and thus no official capacity to influence how the states appoint their electors. I see no plausible argument for barring prosecution of that alleged conduct. So I think that's helpful a little bit to see how she's thinking of this. What are the duties assigned to a president by the Constitution? Does this fall into one of those duties? If it does, then there's this analysis necessary. But if it doesn't, as in the case of choosing electors, then it's clear-cut personal, and then they're fully, they can, there's no, as she says, there's no possible argument for barring prosecution. So I think that's where we are. You know, in this understanding of these cases, I think there's going to be a lot of commentary as we move into the future. I'm sure I'll have something to say about it as I read more about it. There were a few legal experts that I would like to read more about before I give you more of this. So I'll keep dribbling this out in the next few shows. I think this immunity case is going to keep coming back. It's an important one. We'll get to the free speech one as well in a minute, because I think that one's crucial as well. In some ways, you know, both are crucial, because the immunity case is crucial for political freedom. You know, the danger of this immunity case, if it's interpreted in the wrong way, is that it basically shields the president from any prosecution, from any wrongdoing, and thus moves us closer to an authoritarian state. And we'll see that, of course, the free speech issue is a big issue, because free speech is such a big issue. One other small item regarding the immunity is that Trump is going to appeal his hush money case, conviction, not case, his hush money conviction. He's going to ask the court to throw it out based on the immunity defense. I think the chances of that actually going through are very small. I mean, this will be the first test of this immunity, in clearly paying a porn star money not to reveal stuff about a sitting president and a candidate. Well, actually, no, he wasn't sitting president. So this is, as a candidate, has nothing to do with the president's functioning. So I think this will be thrown out. But again, this will be a good test of the immunity thing. The Manhattan District Attorney's Office didn't oppose this. Guy said, "Go ahead, appeal this," because I think they're pretty confident that this is nonsense. To quote the office, we believe defendant's arguments to be without merit. We do not oppose his request to leave the file and his putative request to adjourn sentencing pending determination of his motion. So they're not objecting to this, and they're going to delay the sentencing of Trump for the hush money case until the court decides it. I think nobody's in a hurry. with regard to this. He's not going to go to jail, so nobody really cares about what the outcome of this ultimately is in terms of sentencing. The main thing is they want to be able to call him a felon. I think that's the main thing. The main thing that they people who don't like Trump want to be able to do. All right, that is the immunity case. All right, let's move on to the free speech case. Again, a complex case. While the decision was unanimous, 9-0, there was division in the court. I think it was 6-3 in terms of the reasoning, which is important because three very conservative judges very, 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 very disappointingly did not, in my view, and in the view of other legal commentators, did not stand up for free speech in a kind of principled way. Gorsuch, Thomas, and Alito kind of sent it back, agreed with the rest of the court to send it back, to send the free speech case, the case about social media, the Texas and Florida laws, to send it back to the lower courts. But they clearly, projected what they would have decided based on the facts as they have them right now, which was a very anti-free speech approach, which was an approach that would regulate social media. Remember, the Supreme Court refused to rule about the Biden administration's pressure on social media, and now the most conservative justices have basically indicated that they're not interested in defending free speech from state regulation. They actually think that in the case of social media, in the case of social media in the public square, regulating speech is okay. And this is the three most conservative justices. So I think where free speech is in real trouble. This court has been really ambiguous about it. I hope that the 6 majority votes hold when these cases come back to the Supreme Court after they've been adjudicated in the lower courts, but it's not clear that will happen. But you really need there is no more important an issue than free speech, and clearly the conservatives are not interested in protecting free speech. I mean, conservatives have never been really big on free speech, and this is the case. Now, in relation to that, there is a op-ed editorial. There's an editorial in the New York Times today, and the title of the editorial is "The First Amendment is Out of Control." First Amendment is out of control. Pretty bleak. By Tim Wu. Tim Wu is a law professor at Columbia University who writes a lot about big tech, serves on the National Economic Council as a special assistant for competitive and tech policy. He served on that council for 2021, 2023. Tim Wu thinks, look, free speech is great. It was great when it was written in the 18th century, and it's been fantastic in preserving our ability to have a political dissent, and it's really, really important. So he takes an instrumentalist approach to this, right? Free speech is good because it encourages it facilitates political dissent and political argumentation. But he says this is all being distorted and perverted by social media, and we need state regulation or state control over social media and over social media. And while he says he disagrees with the particulars of the Florida and Texas laws, he is very opposed to the Supreme Court ruling that sent us back to the lower courts, because he's afraid that the Supreme Court, by ruling this way, and the majority opinion in that court, would suggest that the government and states and the federal government have no role in regulating this new public square, the social media companies, which would give social media companies too much power over debate and discussion, and that this is wrong, right? You know, he writes, while the Supreme Court remanded both cases to lower courts for further factual development, the court nonetheless went out of its way to state, this is the majority, that the millions of algorithmic decisions made every day by social media platforms are protected by the First Amendment. It did so blithely assuming that those algorithmic decisions are equivalent to the expressive decisions made by human editors at newspapers. And then he goes on, the judicial needs to realize that the First Amendment is spinning out of control. I don't know what the hell that means, right? Freedom is spinning out of control, guys. You got too much freedom out there. It is beginning to threaten many of the essential jobs of the state. The state is primary, such as the protecting national security and the safety and privacy of its citizens. Right? Now, I don't know how national security fits in here. I think his case is by the Supreme Court's reasoning. TikTok will not be able to be banned, but the Supreme Court explicitly said in its decision, based on what I read, that this protection of First Amendment right only applies to American-based company citizens. They left that opening to be able to ban TikTok, right? And notice this, I don't know if Wu is from the left or from the right. Probably, I mean, he served in the Biden administration, so I assume he's from the left. But this is the same reasoning you will get from the right that is opposed to this, ultimately the same reasoning that I think you would have gotten from the 3 Supreme Court justices who did not concur with the majority of opinion. This is the left and the right. What he is writing is consistent with the way both the left and the right view, I think, the First Amendment and the First Amendment, and particularly with regard to social media. Yeah, I mean, likewise, he writes, likewise, in the name of protecting free speech, courts have also made it difficult for lawmakers to protect people's privacy and repeatedly struck down efforts to protect children. So he's bringing out the children, which again will be something MAGA will again support. This is very much an opinion that is consistent with the right and the left. It's really, really scary. I mean, I didn't make it up that the 3 most conservative judges opposed the very pro-free speech opinion of the majority 6. It tells you that the right is not good on free speech. I mean, this could be anybody on the right. In our era, the power of private actors has grown to rival that of nation states. Most powerful are the big tech platforms, which in their cocoon-like encompassing of humanity have grown to control commerce and speech in ways that would make totalitarian states jealous. In a democracy, the people ought to have the right to react to and control such private power as long as it does not trample on the rights of individuals. As long as, right? Define rights of individuals. Right? Define rights of individuals. This is anyway, this is the left and the right. The left and the right. He ends, well, we'll leave it at that. Anyway, so this issue is going to keep coming back. Of course, the courts now are going to deal with both the Texas and the Florida cases. We will see how the courts deal with those cases, and this issue is going to come back to the Supreme Court. But it is pretty scary that there are real forces, both on the left and on the right, that are the 3 judges, right, on the right, and this guest commentary in the New York Times are all sharing an advocacy for restrictions on free speech, restrictions on the speech of the platforms, right? So the platform should not be treated as if they have free speech, is the argument that is being made. All right, a few quick stories relating to, again, what's going on in the world. So let's start with Putin. It does appear that there is growing links and cooperation and discussion between Putin and the Houthis. Putin has every incentive in the world to create angst and trouble and for the West. The Houthis have agreed not to attack Russian and Chinese ships. And it does appear like Russia has agreed to provide the Houthis with weapons. It appears that Russia is considering providing the Houthis with anti-ship ballistic missiles, which would be much more powerful than what they have today, which the Iranian missiles. The Houthis already get missiles from. They have some Russian weapons already from Syria that are being brought down to them through, again, the Iranian allies who are helping move weapons from Syria to the Houthis in Yemen. You can expect more of that to happen. This would be major, but this is so pathetic. This is exactly the Putin taking advantage of the West's weakness, taking advantage of the fact that the West won't actually deal with the Houthis, that we kind of pinprick, we use pinpricks against them. The Houthis should have been destroyed months ago. Instead, they're only getting stronger. They're only going to get more effective. It'll be really interesting to see how Trump deals with this, how Trump deals with the Houthis when he's president, because I think now it's pretty obvious he's going to be president. What he does with Putin, how this integrates with whatever he does with Ukraine, and of course his position on Israel and everything going on there. But the Biden administration has shown its continuing weakness, and that continuous weakness has been reflected in the fact and the reality that they've not taken care of the Houthis. Whenever there's an opportunity to upset the West, to create havoc in the West, Putin is going to jump on it. And in this case, he is aligned, as we know, with Iran. Iran is providing him with drones. He's providing them with other weapon systems. And the Houthis, of course, a satellite organization of the Iranians. So this all fits together. It's part of the new alliance of Russia with Iran and the Houthis. This could create even more havoc in the Middle East if Russia goes through with this. Not clear if it's going to happen. These are still just expectations and talks and some rumors. But I think it makes sense, and I think it makes sense for Putin, and I think it's consistent with the way I think he sees the world and the way he plays all this. All right, another quick item is, they had an election in Panama recently, and this businessman won the election, and one of the things that he committed to doing, and it now looks like is going to happen, is to close the Darien Gap. The Darien Gap is this narrow portion of Panama in the jungle where there is basically a smuggling route, a path that connects Panama with Colombia, where migrants who make it to South America and then travel up through Panama come to the United States. So this is one of the main routes now of illegal migration to the United States. So that path, again, starts, could be Venezuela, it could be Venezuelans coming up, it could be Colombians or Bolivians coming up, but some of it is Chinese flying over to Latin America and then coming up through the Darien Gap. So the Darien Gap is a major channel. It's a major point of illegal migration coming up towards the United States. And what he committed to is closing that and basically deporting everybody who tries to come in. He now has a deal with the Biden administration, where the Biden administration is basically going to hand over cash, going to pay Panama. The United States has been doing this for a long time. It did this under Trump. It's done this under Biden, paying Latin American countries to stop the migrant flow to the north. And in this case is the same. The United States will pay Panama, this new president of Panama, who's committed to closing the gap. The United States will pay Panama in order to stop the flow of migrants at that particular bottleneck. It's one path. There's only one way to get from Latin America to Central America, and that's through Panama. And if they shut that down, a significant number, not all, but a significant number of the illegal migrants coming into the United States will stop. They'll have to find another route. We know they will. If they, once people want to do something, if there's demand and if there's, they will find a way. It's like drugs. You can choke it off here, you can choke it off there, but they will find a way in. There's just no question about that. And they'll find a way in to the United States. The same thing with migrants. And so what you're seeing in Panama is they'll block that off, and migrants will come by sea, or they'll come in different ways. Of course, you'll continue to get the Hondurans and Nicaraguans coming up because they're north of Panama, so they don't have to go through the Darien Gap. Human beings are very, very creative, very, very resourceful. And when they want to get stuff done, they can get stuff done. And, the fact that you make it illegal and the fact that you make it hard doesn't stop them. It just increases the profits available. The illegality of something makes it more profitable. All right. Let's see. What else do we have? Yes. We've talked about these weight loss drugs, these drugs that are used both for diabetes and have become weight loss drugs, and are now a lot of people are claiming, a lot of doctors are testing them as kind of miracle drugs that also it might have a real impact on cardiovascular diseases and a bunch of other things. These are the GLP-1 medicines, primarily Ozempic and Wegovy. But these are drugs that are produced by Nordisk, and Eli Lilly has a drug like this. But they are now in massive demand because they're used for obesity and diabetes. But also, again, a lot of people are claiming these are drugs that could really help cure diseases and extend human life. So there's a massive increase in their use above and beyond just the issue of obesity and diabetes. Bernie Sanders has, for several months now, been really on a campaign targeting these drugs, basically saying, look, these drugs are too expensive, it's wrong, it's unfair, it's all this stuff. Some of these drugs cost as much as $1,100 a month. We need to put a price cap on them. We need to push down the price, and we need to make it available for more people. Now, in spite of the fact that there's going to be competition around this because a number of companies are producing these drugs, Sanders has been pushing for these drugs to be capped. There's a whole mechanism in the United States under the Biden administration to cap prices of different drugs. It's a matter of the government deciding that these are crucial drugs that need to be cheaper, and then they'll force companies to sell them cheaper. It's just unbelievable, right? I mean, here's something really amazing that the private pharma companies have produced, and now we want to penalize them for it. So what is happening? Biden has joined Sanders in this. There seems to be there's a new op-ed piece where Biden and Sanders, blasting Novo Nordisk for charging the American people, quote, unconscionable high prices for its popular GLP-1 drugs. They note that the drugs cost several times more in the United States than in other developed nations. And so this is going to be a battle. Of course, it's a battle where Biden holds a big gun, a big nasty gun, and they are likely to come after these drugs and force the prices down. They're going to use Medicare and Medicaid to do it. They're going to force the drug companies to negotiate with Medicare, which is this massive entity. Anyway, as usual, amazing pharmaceutical innovations are attacked by the left and attacked for the profits they make, and as a consequence, the government is going to step in and force them to shrink those profits and to shrink ultimately the availability of these drugs. So that is where we are. Nothing particularly new. It's and unexpected, nothing surprising. This is what the Biden administration is all about. All right, let's take a comic break. We can take a comic break. You guys up for that? I don't know why the video and the screen moved. Let me just move it back. All right, there we go. All right, let's do this. There's Candace. You can all see Candace. It's a short video. It's 1 minute exactly. It's pretty funny, but important in that if this doesn't cause you to write her off completely and her millions of followers, then I don't know what will. I don't know what her following right now is, but it's still in the millions. She is hugely popular. She is hugely part of the right. She is definitely part of MAGA and a representative, if you will, of MAGA. This is how stupid they are.
Guys, imagine being married to me. My poor husband, he rolls over. He's like, "What are you reading?" And I feel like a regular wife says something, I don't know, maybe a love series, Nora Roberts, sweeping her away. Me, on the other hand, he rolled over, he asked me, and I said, "Oh, I'm reading a flat earth theory."
She's reading flat earth theory. Flat earth theory.
And it dawned into an entire conversation. He's like, why are you reading a flat earth theory? And I'm like, because somebody messaged me on Manect about it, and they included some links, and I'm just reading them. I don't know. I'm just an interested person, no matter what.
She's just interested. Hey, you guys seem pretty curious people. Are you guys reading flat earth theory just because out of curiosity? Because, you never know. Maybe the earth is indeed flat. It's a theory. There are lots of theories. The evolution is a theory that, we might as well just,
There's a bunch of people that believe something. I now want to know what it is that they believe.
I wonder if you read Ayn
of course,
Rand,
he pushed
because there's a bunch
me
of
on
people.
this, and he was talking about the Earth curvature and science. And I said to him, listen, I'm not a flat earther. I'm not a round earther. Actually,
She's not a round earther. She's not a flat earther. And she's not a round earther. I think generally, if somebody's not a round earther, we should just write them off. I mean, they're basically finished. That's it. Their mind is mush. They're not worth even considering. Because, we're talking about just being a round earther. Yeah. David says maybe she's a square earther. I mean, maybe the earth is a bunch of flat earths, which would make it a square, a rectangle. Maybe it's a different shape completely. Who knows? But she's not a round earther. Right? All right, this is you gotta hear the last few seconds of this. This is good.
I am somebody who has left the cult of science.
She's left the cult of science. The cult of science. I have, we have a terminology for this. It's called a medievalist. She is now officially, unequivocally a medievalist. I mean, somebody says, "Oh, we shouldn't waste time on Candace." We need a little bit of a comic break once in a while in our shows, right? We're so serious over here. We need to laugh a little bit. She is the cult of the mystic, yes, Adam. She is a medievalist. She can join what's his name from the 1220 project, the 1220 project, going back to 1220. They thought the Earth was flat back then too. And they thought science was probably a cult. There was no science, so.
I have left the mega church of science. Because what I have now realized is that science, what it is actually, if you think about it, is a pagan faith.
I mean, I want you to think about it. She asks you to think about it. Science is a pagan faith. Science, a pagan faith. By the way, later on, like a few minutes later, I don't want to have you watch the whole thing. She reads some flat earther and she reads some stuff. And then she says, yeah, I mean, clearly the moon landing is fake. NASA just made that up. I've read some books. The moon landing is absolutely fake. Science is just pagan religion, pagan faith. So, okay, I mean, I don't know. Scott still wants to have a big tent with her. That's fine. We are going to let Scott have a big tent with her and Tucker Carlson. They can also all sing Kumbaya. You guys, please don't. Please, there's just nothing. We have nothing in common with this ridiculous woman, pathetic, ridiculous woman. So please just leave her alone, right? And let her be. But yes, the Scots of the world can have her. We don't need her. We can move away from her. And so what's the conspiracy theory guy? The guy who got, the school shootings were fake and all of that. What's his guy? What's his name? I mean, I think we cannot put her in his category. And Alex Jones, we can put Candace with Alex Jones, write her off, and they are a piece of the right, a not small piece of the right, a big piece of the right, but they are part of the right. That I think anybody sane can write them off and write their allies off and write their friends off and just write them off. And I'll just say, because once in a while I need to say this, I told you years ago, not months ago, I told you years ago that this woman was no good, that she was no good. And I was right. I told you Tucker Carlson was no good, and I was right. And Candace Owens is no good, and I was right. And I've been right a lot. Don't get any respect for that, but it is the reality. I think we've written off the far left. Haven't we written off the far left? Anybody here have sympathies for the far left? No, the far left's been written off a long time ago. So the far left is written off. It's time to write off the far right, or whatever you want to call this. Is this the far right? Whatever. The wacky right needs to be written off. Wacky left has been written off. Wacky right. Talk about, well, we're not ready to talk about the wacky right. We'll talk about more of the wacky right in a minute. In a minute, we'll talk about the wacky right. All right. I don't know. Good news out of Silicon Valley. Again, some of you might want to just shield. You might want to pause the show here and skip forward. You might not be ready for this. This is, one of those things where, I don't know. All right. Alexander Wang. Alexander. No E. Alexandr. Alexander Wang. It's a strange spelling, I think. I thought Alexander has an E-R. Anyway, Alexander Wang is the CEO of San Francisco-based. San Francisco, I mean, the most evil place on planet Earth. A San Francisco-based AI and software company. It's called, I don't know what the name of the company is, but it's a, well-respected company. Why don't I have, yeah, Scale. It's called Scale. So, Scale AI. Thank you, Capitalist Spy. Scale AI. This is what he wrote on a post on his company website. He wrote, quote, "Today, we formalized an important hiring policy at Scale. We hire for MEI. Merit, excellence, and intelligence. MEI, merit, excellence, and intelligence." He continues to write. He says, "No group has a monopoly on excellence. We will not pick winners and losers based on someone being the right or wrong race, gender, and so on. Scale is a meritocracy, and we must always remain one." This is in San Francisco. What is happening to the world? Now, what is really amazing about this is not that some startup CEO has this approach. If you remember, in the midst of DEI mania, was it in 2020, 2021, 2022, somewhere around there, the Coinbase CEO basically wrote something like, "There's no politics in this office. We're here to do a job. You're here to do a job. No more politics. If you want to leave, I'll pay you a good severance package. Please leave. If you can't avoid talking about politics in the office, on the chat boards and everything else, we're here to do business, not to do this other stuff," right? And he did that. He fired people. So that's happened. But at the time, there was pretty much silence. Nobody talked about it. He got no support for it. This time, the reception is off the charts. Basically, other than a couple of articles in TechCrunch, which has been captured by the far left a long time ago, everybody else basically says, "Yes, this is excellent. Go for it, Wang." He's been praised. Now, this is from Pirate Wire, which is my source for information about Silicon Valley, which is, I don't always agree with Pirate Wire, but I've got another story from Pirate Wire. But for news on California and Silicon Valley, there's nobody better, and nobody better than them, I think. Anyway, the reception has been incredibly positive. He's been praised by people all over Silicon Valley. You can, as the author of this article says, you could probably fill an entire website with quotes from influential tech figures who have recently come out for mission first and meritocracy over DEI. And in fact, the article goes on, Balaji Srinivasan did just that. He recently dropped meritocracy.com, a site whose homepage is just a grid of pro-meritocracy tweets from tech leaders. For example, usual suspects, right? Merit should be the only reason for hiring. That's from Elon. David Sachs, startup tip, you're not required to have DEI. Firing this team will immediately save costs and improve performance. Bill Ackerman is citing Martin Luther King. But we've got a bunch. We've got Lulu Cheng Mezevi, I'm not sure who she is, Brian Armstrong, others, Joe Lonsdale, I know Joe. And basically it's all about, merit. Joe Lonsdale says merit and its associated virtue, competence, solves a large percentage of the problem facing our civilization, improving millions of lives. The most important policy battery are not left-right. They are around merit versus virtue signaling and competence versus incompetence. These are all venture capitalists, CEOs in Silicon Valley or related to Silicon Valley. You can see they're full of this. There's also a job board now. This is interesting. There's a job board of available positions at companies that are solely mission-oriented, that have bought into MEI. MEI, right? Merit, excellence, and intelligence. That's mission-driven companies. You can find there 3,439 positions at 29 different companies as of now. It's a brand new thing. So we're seeing venture capitalists. Venture capitalists will have a huge influence on the companies that they provide capital to. There's a real shift in Silicon Valley and San Francisco as part of that. DEI is dying. And let me just say this again. I told you so. I told you so. So Wang Street, he's been praised by his peers, by other founders, by other venture capitalists. DEI, guys, is out. It's dying. It's dying. The wacky left cannot win in this country. The wacky right can. We'll get to that in a minute. And will. It's winning. It will win. It's going to win this November. The wacky right is going to win. And it has plans for you. It has plans for you. So there's no right-wing, broadly based right-wing shift in Silicon Valley. There just isn't. Like if you look at the numbers, how much they contribute to the Democratic Party versus how much they contribute to the Republican Party, that has not changed. Two things have changed. Even people supporting the Democratic Party are fed up with DEI, are fed up with the nonsense associated with it, are fed up with the far left, and are willing to embrace an MEI proposition. Even people on the center left. And the people on the right in Silicon Valley, who have always been there, are willing to talk now, are willing to, go out there and speak, because they don't fear retribution, because the people on the left, are not passionate about the DEI thing at all. They used to be, but it's blowing up in their face, and they realize that, and they realize now it's bad and evil, and they're moving away from it. And this is true of Americans generally, right? So there's clearly a shift away. We saw that in this article the other day about that I talked about yesterday, I think, about the study nobody can replicate by McKinsey about DEI improving performance. It doesn't, right? And there's some holdouts. TechCrunch is definitely, we've talked about this before, that much of Wired and TechCrunch, the technology magazines, have been captured by the far left. But the far left is losing, I think, the hearts and minds of the most influential, the most important leaders in the country. It's going to be interesting. I am, in August, I'm going to be at a conference in Frankfurt, Germany, actually. But the conference is a conference of, I'd say this one is international, because they run one in the US and one international, so this will have a pretty diverse, pretty big group of people from different places. But it's typically, Silicon Valley types, venture capital, entrepreneurs. It will include venture capitalists and entrepreneurs from Europe. It'll include people. It includes successful businessmen, but also it includes politicians and academics, both from the left and from the right. But it's not typically my crowd. There are no other objectivists there. There's definitely people from who are consider themselves conservative. Tyler Cowen, for example, is there, who's soft L libertarian. But it's generally kind of, I'd say, a left of center group. And it's going to be interesting to see what the vibe is there, because some of them in the past have been pretty far left, and it'd be interesting to see how that has moved them. But I think that what we've seen with the demonstrations on campus, and what we've seen with what's happening with the universities, what we've seen is a backlash against the general agenda, the agenda of the crazy left, even among people who are left of center. And, you know, the real danger is not from the left, it's from the right, as I've been saying for well over 10 years, and Leonard Peikoff has been saying since he wrote The Ominous Parallels, at least in his books. All right, so let's talk about France. As we said, what's going on in France is that basically the far right, Marine Le Pen, which is far right, has basically more than doubled its vote from just a few years ago. It now clearly is dominating French politics. Macron and his centrist party is gone. The only way the center left could find relevancy is by linking up with the far left, and only a coalition with the far left and the kind of center left that has often governed France. That is the only way they could get any kind of political traction. And what is interesting is who the far right in France is actually attracting. Who is voting for the far right in France? It's very similar to who's voting for Trump. That is, the people who used to vote for the left, the working class, have abandoned the left completely. The working class today votes for the right. And in the case of France, they're voting for the far right. And they're voting for Marine Le Pen's political party, something unheard of. You would have never expected the working class, who are leftists, always have been. But this is the trick. The far right on economic issues is the far left. That's true in Europe, and to a large extent, it's true in the United States. We'll see what Bannon has to say about that in a little bit. Economic policy, in terms of for the National Rally and for which is Marine Le Pen's party and for the new Republican Party, economic policy is all about beefing up the working class. And if that means more welfare, if that means more medical assistance, if that whatever that takes, that is what they're going to be focused on. None of this free market stuff, none of this free trade stuff, certainly not free trade. It's all about supporting and bolstering real Americans, real Frenchmen, the working class. Macron himself, his support is basically from wealthy neighborhoods around Paris and at the periphery. The left gets the intellectuals, and people who are steeped in leftist ideology and have been for a long time, mainly college-educated intellectuals. And the far right gets the working class, the poor and the lower middle class, and much of the middle class itself. Indeed, right now, if you look at the demographics of the people who voted for the National Rally, and you look at the demographics of France, they match up. They match up. It's not any one group. They're attracting people from all the groups, but primarily from the bulk of the population, which is typically in the middle class. And what you're going to see, what you're seeing is this, just a crumbling of the French establishment and a radicalization of French politics. And I think that's what we're seeing in the United States. The middle has fallen, has crumbled. And this is what Ayn Rand said would happen when she wrote in the 60s and 70s. The mixed economy is unstable. the mixed economy is not tenable. It is not possible to sustain the mixed economy. Mixtures don't survive. They either go in one direction or the other, towards more statism or less. And given that there's no principled defense of less statism, the mixed economy must drift or accelerate towards greater and greater statism. I mean, Ayn Rand predicted this. And the way it is manifesting itself right now is that both sides of the so-called political spectrum, the so-called left and right, have both drifted towards greater and greater statism. The left has always been there. The left has always been statist. The left has always wanted the state to rule our lives. What is new, what is tragic, what is suicidal for Western civilization is that the right have joined them. Again, completely consistent with the way Ayn Rand viewed history. Ideas drive history. There is no anti-state voices out there other than her and a few classical liberals and libertarians. And all you have right now is a push towards greater and greater power for the state, from both left and right. The center hails the mixed economy. The center wants to have its cake and eat it too. Oh, some statism, but not too much. Some welfare, but not too much. Some state regulation, but not too much. It's all they have. The way, the cost and benefits of different levels of statism. The center cannot hold. The center cannot survive. And therefore, all you have are the extremes. And in the world today, in Europe and in the United States, I don't know about the rest of the world, but certainly in Europe and the United States, the left is out of touch. The world today is not interested in Marxist ideology. And it's not interested in woke. What the world today is interested in is stopping those migrants from coming in. That's what they want. What the French want is to stop those Muslim migrants. What the Americans want is to stop those Latin migrants. Just migrants generally. We'll talk about that in a minute. Just stop migration. We don't want any more people. We're afraid, we're angry, and we want to shut our borders. That is Europe, that is the United States. The left is impotent in the face of that. The left will keep going, no, 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 we want more people. It's good. We owe them. We're guilty. And the right, and the people, not the right, the people saying, no. We might be guilty, but we have to survive. And therefore, we're shutting off our borders. We don't want any of these people. So we're going to vote for the right. And that, if that brings about fascism, so be it. We're not going to tolerate these Muslims in Europe anymore. We're not going to tolerate these Latins in America anymore. We're going to shut the border. And we want protection. We want protection for those Chinese. We want protection from the rich. We want protection from the elites. We want protection. We want our jobs back. We want good jobs. We want good paying jobs. We want our health care. We want the state to provide us with those services. Yeah, here there's a little competition between the left and the right. But the left has failed to provide all those. It doesn't work. Socialized medicine doesn't work. And healthcare in the United States doesn't work. And that's being promoted by the left. Obamacare doesn't work. So let's try a right-wing version of the same thing. But the right's attitude here is not to liberate the economy to help these people. It's to control the economy even further. The left is finished. I mean, they'll win in the UK because the UK always seems to go the opposite direction. Because, the government is being so pathetic. So they'll win in the UK. But that's the only place the left can win today. Can't win in the United States. I mean, the only way the left can win in the United States is because it's Trump. They cannot win in San Francisco. School boards are being replaced. I mean, the far left. And the middle is finished. So no, you want to form coalitions to fight the left. The left is self-destructing. You don't need to fight the left. They're self-destructing. Yes, they control the establishment. They control the culture. They control the universities. They control all of these things. But the people have rejected what they stand for. Rejected it completely. Not rejected it in the name of freedom. Rejected in the name of xenophobia, rejected in the name of fear, rejected in the name of anger, rejected in the name of statism of a different form. But that's where the country is. That's where the world is, or at least the Western world is. The Western world lacks any confidence in itself. And that is what the mixed economy has brought us. And that brings me to... let's see, we got rid of that. Yeah, that leads me to Steve Bannon. Let me see if I can get this. So Steve Bannon did an interview with, what's his name that he did the interview with? I'll tell you in a second. With David Brooks. Did an interview with David Brooks. David Brooks, famous center, right? Basically center. One of the great representatives of the mixed economy, David Brooks. David Brooks interviewed Steve Bannon yesterday. It was published in today's New York Times. Bannon, as you probably know, if you don't know, I'll tell you, Bannon is heading to jail. Headed to jail because he refused to show up when he was subpoenaed in front of Congress, investigating January 6th, and he refused to come. And if you do that, you're out. And so David Brooks, I think, has interviewed Bannon before, so they have a relationship, even though they fundamentally disagree. So Brooks interviewed Bannon about the right, and interviewed him about the right, and interviewed him about the ascent of the right, the success of the right. I mean, in spite of the BS coming from people like Scott, the right is being successful. Scott is still afraid of the left, but that's okay. I mean, he'll get out from under his bed at some point and realize that he's won. He's got the status of the right that he always wanted. Anyway, so Steve Bannon is asked, what's the core narrative of what is going on? Why is the right being as successful as they have been? Why is the right being so successful as they have been right now? Even Nigel Farage's Reform Party, is going to win seats for the first time. What is it about the right now that makes them so successful? And Bannon has always been a evil bastard, but a real good observer of the culture. He says, quote, well, I think it's very simple, that the ruling elites of the West lost confidence in themselves. The elites have lost their faith in their countries. Now, I want you to hold there because I have to skip further along in this interview. We'll keep it there for a second. So he's asked, what's going on? And he noticed the loss of confidence. And again, I told you so, right? I've been saying this, I don't know for how long, for a very long time. The problem in the West, the problem in America, is we've lost our self-esteem. We've lost our self-confidence. We don't know who we are. We don't know what we stand for. We don't know what makes us special. We've lost any understanding of what Western civilization actually is. We don't know how to ground it. We don't know how to base it. So we're afraid. We've lost confidence. We're uncertain. We're questioning. Because we've divorced ourselves from the very foundational ideas of Western civilization. We don't even know what those ideas are. It's that bad. So Bannon goes on and he's asked, do you think immigration is the core issue here? That seems to be the one issue that drives popular support everywhere. And this is a really interesting answer. He says, immigration, government spending, it's the lack of confidence and self-loathing of their own civilization and their own culture. That's the spiritual part that's at the base. Immigration is just a manifestation of the loss of self-confidence. God, who thought that I would get confirmation of my view from a monster like Steve Bannon? But that's right. What is the basis by which we're anti-immigration? It's because we have no self-confidence. We don't believe we can assimilate them. We don't believe our values are better than theirs. We're worried that they'll come to this country and change the country rather than us changing them. And what's shocking here is that Bannon is okay with that. That is, Bannon accepts the loss of confidence. It just is. He wants to shut off the borders because, yeah, we can't assimilate them. We can't do it because we don't have the confidence in it. Instead of trying to figure out where does confidence come from? What is it about the West worth preserving? What makes the West unique? How do we re-embolden civilization, Western civilization, to position it vis-a-vis the alternatives, although there are none if you're talking about civilization? What do we do? The answer from Bannon and the rest of them is, yeah, forget about all that. What we need is something new. What we need is something that builds walls and that rejiggers spending so as to return America to the kind of country it was 50 years ago, but without any rediscovery of Western civilization. So we want to return America to being white, religious, where man, is a man and a woman is a woman. I mean, here's Bannon. I came up in the golden age of Pax Americana. A working class dad who had a housewife and 5 kids, all went to Catholic school. I mean, a guy who was a foreman and then lower level white collar management. That's the kind of thing we aspire to have in this country. That's what they want. Woman stays at home, lots of kids, a husband that goes to work, manufacturing, low level, don't be too sophisticated, don't be too much. If you look at it country by country, it's all the same. The lack of jobs, the lack of opportunity, the lack of self-confidence. More jobs than ever, more opportunities than ever. Maybe, yeah, more jobs, more opportunities than ever. I mean, this is just a big lie, which the right tells, but which people are bought into and accept completely, just like they bought for many, many years into the big lies of the left. By the way, these are lies the left perpetrated and the right is just bought into. Lack of jobs, that's a left-wing talking point. Lack of opportunity, left-wing talking point, which the right has now embraced. So what does he want to do? Always comes back to immigrants. Isn't that interesting? That every problem has the exact same solution. It shows you how much of the right today is driven by bigotry, by xenophobes, by racists who just don't want foreigners here. And this is, by the way, his solution is kind of the opposite of what Trump said the other day and why his campaign backtracked so fast from it. Here's what he says. Bannon says, what we should be doing is cutting the number of foreign students in American university by 50% immediately, because we're never going to get an Hispanic and black population in Silicon Valley unless you get them into the engineering schools. So we should cut foreign students and bring Hispanic and black students into those same positions, get them trained for Silicon Valley. Sounds like DEI to me. Sounds like, assigning people based on race. But okay, Bannon wants to kind of funnel Hispanics and blacks into the university slots that he's claiming without any evidence and without any evidence, zero evidence, that foreign students are taking up. And then he says, number two, we should staple an exit visa to their diploma. Remember that Trump said something about stapling a visa or a green card to their diploma, foreign students, when they study here? Bannon is saying exit visa to their diploma. And Bannon here is much more representative of the people on the right today in America, on this new right in America. The foreign students can hang around for a week and party, but then they got to go home and make their own country great. So kick them all out. Kick them all out. Now, and then, he's asked about, the elites, and he says, well, they have the power now, but we're going to win. When they're sent in Europe, we're sent here. And then he's asked about, his economic policy, and he says, look at John Fetterman. Fetterman and Steve Bannon are closer in the economics, not about Israel, economics, than Steve Bannon and the Republican establishment. So Bannon and Fetterman, Bannon and the Democratic Party, are close in economics. This is J.D. Vance and Elizabeth Warren writing bills together. This is Josh Hawley and leftist senators writing bills together. This is right. The new right is leftist on economics, has no respect for individual rights related to economics. Fetterman is not moderate when it comes to economic policy. He's moderate when it comes to Israel, when it comes to woke, when it comes to these things. But in economic policy, he's a leftist. So is Bannon. Bannon continues. Again, consistent. He's saying what I say. The historical left, quote, the historical left is in full meltdown. They always focus on noise, never on the signal. They don't understand that the MAGA movement, as it gets momentum and builds, is moving much further to the right than President Trump. They will look back fondly at Donald Trump. They'll ask, where's Trump when we need him? Okay, so Bannon is telling you Trump is a moderate. Trump is a moderate, but Trump basically, and I've told you this from the beginning, Trump is laying the tracks for the crazy MAGA, for Steve Bannon. He's always played that role. He's softening the culture for them. He wants us to, if we accept him, he brings them in. Because who do you think is going to come in with the Trump administration? MAGA. That's who he's going to bring in. That's who's ready to fill in the offices. He continues, I think we're much more hardcore on things like Ukraine. This is comparing himself to Trump. President Trump is a peacemaker. He wants to go in and negotiate and figure something out as a deal maker. I think 75% of our movement would want an immediate total shutdown. Not one more penny in Ukraine. These are the people, by the way, that we want to have a big tent with. Not one more penny in Ukraine. And massive investigations about where the money went. On the southern border and mass deportation, I don't think President Trump's close to where we are. They all got to go home. Also, this is interesting, also, on artificial intelligence, we're virulently anti-AI. I think big regulations have to come. For anybody who might think Bannon might still be there for some kind of free market. President Trump, he says, is a kind-hearted person. He's a people's person, right? On China, I think he admires Xi Jinping. We agree on that again. But we're super hawks. We want to see an elimination of the Chinese Communist Party. So he doesn't want to, I mean, and this is absolutely right. He doesn't want war with Russia because Russia is part of his coalition. Russia is part of the big tent. Russia and Putin are part of the new right. He wants a war with China. That won't end well. And then he says, and we'll get to this in a minute, in the first 100 days, this is going to be very different than 2016. We will have 3,000 political appointees ready to go. Now, do you think the 3,000 political appointees are going to be more like Trump, the moderate, or more like Bannon, the radical? I think it's self-evident who they're going to be. For example, he gives an example of, I strongly believe that the right after the Associated Press calls the election, this is Bannon speaking, that Jerome Powell will tender his resignation. And so you'll pick a new Federal Reserve chief. What will he do? Lower interest rates, I guess. And then he talks about the fact that he, Bannon, basically controls the Republican Party, not the people up there. He says the Republican Party is structured as basically a grassroots party, but they never filled the precincts. And that's where we fill them, just with our guys. That's how we control all these political parties, from Utah to Arizona to Georgia. He says Governor Brian Kemp doesn't control that in the sense of Georgia. It's all controlled by the grassroots. He's asked who these people are. He says 60% of the grassroots that work for him, that are the activists, are female. And they're over 40 years old, which is consistent with what I've seen. This is kind of an interesting side issue, right? But interesting in the way he deals with it. He says, we're the most pro-Israel and pro-Jewish group out there. All right, interesting. But then this is the caveat. This is great. I mean, you should be so afraid of these people. This is the enemy. What I say is that not just the future of Israel, but the future of American Jews, not just safety, but their ability to thrive and prosper as we have in this country, is conditional upon one thing. I'm curious, what is the future of Israel and the future of American Jews, their safety and their ability to thrive, conditional on? What is it conditional on? A hard weld with Christian nationalism. A hard weld with Christian nationalism. So the Jews are going to be treated fine. The Jews are going to be prosperous in this country. Israel, we're going to be very pro-Israel as long as they all accept and support a Christian nationalist agenda for America. This is the big tent, guys. This is the conservative movement you want to support. This is who you want. I mean, you can choose Candace Owens or Steve Bannon, and people are going to tell you in the chat, oh, no, they're not that popular, not that big. Allow me to laugh at you. I mean, He says, you know, he makes fun of George Will. George Will is one of the good guys, I think. He makes fun of George Will. If George Will was who you'd align with, right? He makes fun of George Will. All right. I mean, I think that's all I marked up. I mean, you can read the rest of it if you want. It's in the New York Times. God. All right. I think we're going to skip the California budget because I've got a lot of super chat questions. We've already gone an hour and a half. So I think I'll skip that. But yeah, I mean, Scott says George Will is a pathetic snob. George Will is the best the conservatives have produced. He's the best intellectual in the conservatives. He is the best. He is the best writer. He is the best thinker. He's by far the best of them. And this is who Scott wants to kick out of his big tent, because there's no room for Steve Bannon and George Will in it. So he's just a snob. Why? Because he doesn't like the Messiah Trump. I mean, this is the scary Republican Party. This is the scary right in the United States. This is the right in the United States. There is no other right in the United States. There is nobody good. There is, I'll say this again, nobody good. It's been captured by the MAGA nutcases. That is the Republican Party. That is the new American right. I mean, Nikki Haley and that part of the Republican Party maybe gets 15% of Republicans, but that's it. There's nobody else. 85% right now are MAGA. They're all on board. And right now they think Bannon is a little extreme, but he will become more and more mainstream. This is how ideas work. He'll become more and more mainstream, more and more acceptable. They'll accept Trump. They'll not accept more. And J.D. Vance and Josh Hawley. They're already, you know, they've already, I mean, Marjorie Taylor Greene, one of the all-time unbelievable nutcases, is completely accepted in the Republican Party. Nope, nobody cares. Everybody's and yeah. I mean, I don't know that Nick Fuentes will ever become mainstream, but we're heading in that direction. And that is the right you're supporting. Certainly Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens are part of this. They've obviously part of the mainstream right. They're not some crazy sidelines, and yet they are crazy, and they should be sidelined. Sorry, you know, but that is the state of the right in the U.S., and it's the state of the right, I think, all over Europe. It is, I think, the demise of the Conservative Party in the U.K. is the last breath of that, you know, of that mixed economy, center-right, moderate, meaningless, nothing, middle of the roaders who stand for nothing. The principal supporters of liberty and freedom have no home. No home. They're not on the right. They're not on the left. They're not in the Reform Party in the UK. They're not in the new Republican Party in the United States. They're not in the old center-right party of France, or in Marie Le Pen's party. They're just not there. The supporters of freedom and liberty just don't have a home. And you might not like that, and you might want to pretend. You might want to pretend because, yeah, it's scary. But it's just pretend. And the sooner you recognize it's just pretend, the sooner we can get on with the business of defending liberty and defending freedom. But if we're constantly having people in our own midst actively supporting and defending and speaking for the right and Trump, God, you know, it just becomes hopeless. It's very hard to be optimistic given the nonsensical state of American and European politics and the nonsensical state of those who claim to be pro-liberty. I mean, it would be one thing if we just could easily relegate them. All right, this is Mike. We're going to Super Chat now. We're doing pretty well. We're doing very well, but there's still 150 left to get to our target, so hopefully we can close that gap in the next hour or so. Michael says, okay, I'll do Michael, but then I have to jump to the $100 questions. We got a bunch of those. They should have priority, but I started Michael. I'll finish it. Have you read any Project 2025? It's flawed, but better than the previous conservative principles, and might be worthy of a show. The left is already hyperventilating about it. Yes, and of course, it's a huge mixed bag. It's a huge mixed bag. Some of it represents some of the better thinking. Okay, so what is Project 25? Let's quickly do that. Project 2025, Bannon actually mentions this in his interview. Project 2025 is an effort by conservatives and MAGA and people on the right to be ready with an entire agenda when Trump gets into office. That is, have the people ready, have the agenda ready, have it all ready to go when Trump gets into office. So which departments are they going to close? Which departments are going to shut down? What's the budget going to be like? What's the process? Who they're going to embrace? Who they're going to kick out? All of that, they are going to be ready. They're going to be ready with that as soon as he's ready. This is the 3,000 people that Trump will be able to appoint instantaneously, immediately, when he comes into office, because they will have been prepped. The Heritage Foundation is big on this. It's the Heritage Foundation is involved in a big part of this in putting all of this together. So they are one of the think tanks. There's several. One of the think tanks that are kind of looking into this. So what do I think of 2025? It's a huge mixed bag. I think some of it represents kind of old line conservatives. It represents kind of better people that maybe still are hanging around heritage and still experts in their field. And so they're writing the papers. I think those are the people who will be ignored by the new Trump administration. And then it represents a lot of kind of MAGA ideas, a lot of intellectualized MAGA ideas. So, for example, there's a big section about the FTC. Should the FTC be shut down? Should it be kept? What should we do with the FTC? And the conclusion is, you can't get rid of it. There are real issues. FTC, antitrust, the real issues. And we should be, the right needs to embrace these issues. The right needs to embrace the regulation of big business and control of big business. We'll do a better job at that than the left. And that, this is what we need, and we should drop the whole Milton Friedman market mechanisms will take care of it. No, the government has to be robustly engaged in this. And I think on many of these issues, many of the stuff that I've read from the 2025 agenda, that's the position. The position at the end of the day is we need a strong government. We need a strong central government, a conservative government to control these things. On trade, for example, there's still elements within the conservative movements that are pro-trade, that know that. But we also know what Trump's position is, and we know what MAGA's position is on trade. So Project 2025 has two position papers on trade. One, The Case for Free Trade by a guy named Kent Lastman, which I'm sure is fairly good. And the other is The Case for Fair Trade, written by one of the dumbest economists who've ever roamed the earth, Peter Navarro. Or, for example, the Export-Import Bank. Old line conservatives like Veronica Durouget, who's kind of more of a libertarian than an economist, want to get rid of it. So Project 2025 have an essay by her where she says the Export-Import Bank should be abolished. But we can't have that, say the conservatives. So we have a second essay, which the case for the Export-Import Bank by Jennifer Hazelton. Right? So on anything where there's too much of a push towards free markets, there needs to be a corrective essay. There needs to be something that comes in to correct and improve. Now, you know, I haven't read the whole thing. I might read more of it and give you a more thorough assessment of it as we move closer to the elections. But it looks very mixed. I've seen interviews with Kevin Roberts, who is the head of Project 2025. Very disappointed in Roberts because I thought he was quite good when he was running the Texas policy something, TPP something. But yeah, I mean, this is unfortunately a way too compromising a document from the perspective of freedom, from the perspective of liberty. All right. Thank you, Mike, for the idea for the show. Of course, somebody could sponsor that for $1,000 and I'll do it immediately. I'll spend the time reading the document. All right. David, $95, 50,000 Costa Rican something. Is there any faction in Israel with a stated aim, not just lip service, but promises, to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities? I mean, everybody says that. Everybody gives it lip service. Even the center left in Israel gives it lip service. Everybody claims they want to destroy Iran's nuclear capabilities. Is there a faction that would actually do it? Obviously, Netanyahu is a strong no on that because he said it forever and hasn't done it, right? So he's just given it lip service. So who is going to do it? That's very hard to tell. I think clearly the religious nationalists would do it. I don't think they would hesitate. The Smotrich and Ben Gvir, those guys, I think would actually do it. But they are so irresponsible and so crazy on everything else, I wouldn't want them in charge. I wonder about Bennett, if he would do it if he had a proper government. Like when he was prime minister, he basically had this crazy coalition between right-wing parties and left and far left-wing parties and Arabs, where he had a kind of weave a line that was very, very difficult. So I don't think he was. That was an opportunity. But if he had the opportunity, would Bennett do it? I think he would. Nobody has a real promise on the table. No. I mean, they all pretend it's a real promise. So does Netanyahu. But we know what that's worth because we've seen it. It's worth nothing. So as far as I know, nobody has a real, legitimate, viable promise on the table for that. Other than, again, the nationalist, religious kind of crazies. Adam, $100. Wow. To thank you for your MEI, Merit, Excellence, and Intelligence. Here is an EFT to help your NOI. No. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thanks, Adam. Let's see. What else do we have? We have Tom, $126. It's 100 British pounds. Do you think the French far right will actually be effective in solving the negative effects of mass migration as their voters are hoping? Keep up the great work. Of course not. The right never succeeds. The right is just a statist of the left and therefore will fail. They will fail in everything that they try. And the more right-wing they are, the more they will fail. The more statist they are, the more they will fail. So no, Marine Le Pen has no chance of solving these problems in the long run. They might be able to solve them in the short run. I mean, for example, Donald Trump and Bannon and the rest of them will discover that if they start rounding up millions and millions of illegal immigrants and they deport them, which in and of itself is going to be impossible, but if they succeed, then they will also crash the U.S. economy. And so anything they want to achieve, it has a cost. It's not win-win because they're statists, because they want to use coercion, because they want to use the state. So they can only lose. Lose, 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 lose. So no, I don't think that the right is going to solve any problems unless they adopt different policies. Now, often they can run on one agenda and actually do something different. But to the extent that the right in France lowers the retirement age back to 60, to the extent that they start spending like there's no tomorrow, to the extent that they start kicking out migrants, to that extent, the French economy is going to collapse and be destroyed. And I guess they will take the blame. I'm not sure who then will be the alternative, because it will seem at that point that everything's being tried, except freedom and liberty. But that is the one set of ideas that has no constituency. No constituency for freedom and liberty. No constituency for free markets. Political freedom, free speech. Just nobody believes in those things anymore. So no, I don't think they can be effective, and most of what they do will have unbelievably horrific negative side effects. I think the same is true of Trump. Trump will be more consistently MAGA this time, and therefore worse for the economy, for life, for how we run things, for America, worse for America. All right, Remo, are you going to see The Veritas by Rafael Monti at Musée Alameda when you are in Lisbon? P.S. During your member show, you said it was Naples. There is a museum in Naples that I want to see, but this particular sculpture, you're right. This one is in. God, there's a very similar sculpture. That's fascinating. There's a very, very similar sculpture in Naples. I guess this one is in Lisbon, and I'm looking to see. I'm looking to see if I can find. You're saying it's in Lisbon, but yes, if it's in Lisbon, I'd love to see it. So hopefully we have time when we're in Lisbon to go see it. So I will be in Lisbon in November. But anyway, yep. Remo also said, this summer I will go on a holiday to the island of Corsica. What is your favorite French food? Oh, I don't know. I don't have foie gras. Foie gras is certainly up there with my favorite foods of all time, particularly the way it's cooked by good French chefs. There's so much good French food. The escargot is great. The tornado rossini is great. I love French food. Very, very rich, but really, really, really good. All right. God, this is jumping around. What are we doing here? Thomas, a criticism of the U.S. government is that during the Cold War, it was far too willing to ally with and give significant aid to very repressive but anti-communist regimes. Do you agree we backed some pretty bad governments? Yes, absolutely. Again, all a symptom back then in the Cold War, but even more so today, of the reality that we just don't have a foreign policy. We just don't have one. We don't have a strategy. We don't have a long-term vision. This is why, Trump can go and hug and kiss and grovel before the brutal dictator of North Korea. And everybody just shrugs. So what? But any kind of principled person in foreign policy would go, that is just so horrific. That is just so. But for that, you need a strategy. You need to have belief in good and evil and know what it means and have a view on it. So yes, I mean, there's no question. Part of the problem is that once you're weak, once you project weakness, which America does very, very effectively, right? Then you're susceptible to these, supporting bad regimes, to supporting bad regimes. Trump scares nobody. Nobody in the world is scared of Trump. Has anyone verified that Candace Owens really said what we saw in the video? It looks like an AI deepfake, or she's gone off the deep end, way off. She's gone off the deep end, way off. Yeah, you can find a longer segment, shorter segments. You can find the show in which she did this. Her little story about her husband. That's all Candace Owens. That's not AI. That's not a deepfake. She's nuts. She's always been nuts. I've warned you. I've told you. It only gets worse once you identify these irrationalities, once you identify an epistemology of mysticism, an epistemology of religion. It's just a matter of time before they go completely off the rails, which I guess she has now, but she's always shown an indication of this. James Taylor, you can't talk your way into a positive mindset. You have to act your way into a positive mindset. You have to turn to the work. Then when there's pain, you're never going to solve it through dwelling on it. I mean, there's a lot of truth to that, but you got to dwell. You got to dwell as well, right? You've got to also think it through. Just acting is a materialistic, non-intellectual view of life. You've got to figure it out. You've got to think it through. You've got to identify the mistakes that you made, or the evil that's being done, or the errors of whatever, and so you've got to do both. Thinking precedes action. You've got to act, but you've also got to think it through. Alexis, whether in France or the US, left and right seem to close up on freedom like a monstrous trap. What can one do? Fight for freedom. I mean, there's just no alternative. You got to stay away from the left and the right. You've got to politically support what buys you the most time. And in France, I think Macron buys you the most time. I don't know who buys you the most time in the US. It's such a mess over here. It depends on local elections. In each local election, you should vote by who buys you the most time. But it's hard. And what you really got to do, importantly, speak. Don't support the right. That's what you got to do. Don't support the enemies of liberty. Don't support the enemies of freedom. That's what you have to do. Lucinda, thoughts on the different cover art on different editions of Rand's novels? Any favorites? Always had a sweet spot for the Fountainhead edition with the Frank O'Connor painting cover art because of the story behind it. Yeah, I like the Frank O'Connor version, partially because of the story, partially because, mainly because I think it's pretty good. I like the Gaetano ones, not because I like the art. I would never hang it up on my walls. That's this version. Not because I like the art particularly. I don't. And I wouldn't hang this up on my wall. But because it's a good book cover. Why is it a good book cover? Because that stands out. That attracts your eye. The coloring and just the figure and the pose, it gets your attention. That's what a book cover is supposed to do. I mean, this is, in comparison, this is dull. Whoops, where is it? This is dull, right? Not bad, but dull. So I like the Gaetano prints, vivid in color. That's the same thing. Vivid in color and striking and gets your attention. And that's what you want in a book cover. Thank you, Lucinda. Adam says, the website of Alexander Wang's company, scale.com, has a link to a talk by Fifi Lee. I strongly recommend Fifi Lee's biography, The Worlds I See, just in case anyone doubts how good AI and imagination offer America. Yeah, I mean, you saw Bannon. Bannon wants to ban or to heavily regulating and have government control over AI. Adam has recommended Fifi Lee's biography before. It's on my reading list. There's so much more that, I mean, unfortunately, there's a bunch of books before I get to it, but it is on my reading list. All right. That was all the $20 and up questions that we gone through. We now have a bunch of 10 and 5 and other questions. We're about $100 short of our goal, so it would be great if you guys, if somebody could step in and get us over there in the time that it takes me to answer these questions, which is probably, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. You can ask questions to help us get there. You can just make a contribution using the, what do you call it? The sticker feature. Hopper Campbell gave $10 with that feature, as did, let's see, Tom. And Tom gave, and others did as well, who I cannot scroll back and thank. Paul just gave using a sticker, so thank you guys. The word sticker did not come to me. This is age, guys. This is age. Yeah. All right, let's see. What else did I want to say? Yes, the Ayn Rand Institute is a sponsor of the show. I think the 4th of July celebration is going on right now. So you probably missed it if you're listening to my show, but please go back and check it out, where they connect Atlas Shrugged to the Declaration of Independence. I think that is something very much I think it's with Anka and Nikos. Anka and Nikos. What am I missing here? God. Oh, God, I can't spell. Let me just do this. One second, guys. All right, let's see. Also want to remind you of Alex Epstein is a sponsor of the Yaron Brook Show. You can support Alex by going and consume his content, which is incredibly valuable content. You can consume his content on alexepstein.substack.com, alexepstein.substack.com. There's also an Alex AI, and there's Alex's talking points, which you can get from the Substack, and all of that. So please support all that. It says David just gave some money on a sticker. Thank you, David. But it says that's your third super chat on a live stream, but that's not true. I mean, you've done quite a few super chats lately. There's no way this is a third. YouTube is screwed up. All right, Paul, thank you for the sticker as well. All right. Yes, that is what we wanted a second. All right, let's see what else do we have here. Anyway, to see what the Ayn Rand Institute is up to, go to aynrand.org/start here. Lucinda says, is there cause to worry about power social media has over public opinion, the only solution is forgoing an active-minded public. Even if there's manipulation, an active mind will always follow reason. Yes. And basically, what is the option, right? What is the option? I'm worried about social media because there's so many mindless people on there and so many people are attracted to mindless people. But the people who are attracted to mindless people are mindless people. So there's just an increase in mindlessness out there in the world. And the only solution to that is to leave social media free so those of us with a mind can express ourselves and try to have an influence, try and have an impact on the world and on the culture through social media. We can call them out. We can show videos and show how pathetic and ridiculous they are. Lucinda says, I used to be an ANCAP and a Trump supporter. Not for that long, though. Well, you're only 19. You haven't done anything for that long. But even then, I found Candace Owens too ridiculous to ever take seriously. I was bad, but I still had some standards. Good for you. I am curious. What got you away from ANCAP and Trump? What caused you to move away from them? I assume reading Ayn Rand. How did you read Ayn Rand? How did you encounter Ayn Rand? All right, Michael, did you see the guy who yelled Zionist off the train in New York City got arrested by Alvin Bragg? But Alvin Bragg doesn't want to prosecute. Well, but how, I mean, if all he did was yell Zionist off the train, what do you prosecute him for? Doesn't he have free speech? Did he physically attack the person? I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. Yeah, I'd have to look into the case to have an opinion. But just on, if that's all he said, then there's no basis to prosecute. Good for Alvin Bragg for not prosecuting. If he committed violence, then he should be prosecuted. Richard asks, Lucinda recently asked your opinion about the James Bond movies and books, but you didn't say anything regarding the books. Oh, I must have missed it. Have you read Ian Fleming? I have, a long time ago. I read Ian Fleming in my 20s. That's a long time ago, guys. I liked it. I mean, it was fun. I thought it was a really fun read. And the books generally, like most book to movies, the books were better than the movies. Now, you're going to ask me what is my favorite book? I can't remember. I think the early ones, just vague recollection. But yeah, I enjoyed Ian Fleming. It was a lot of fun. And I like the character of James Bond presented in it. Yeah, not very politically correct these days. But long time ago. So I have kind of these vague recollections of it, not anything specific. Liam says, how is Trump going to implement fascism when the judges he appointed to the Supreme Court keep repealing regulations? Well, a few things. One, Trump is not going to implement fascism. Trump is not, and I've said this over and over again, Trump is not a Nazi. Trump is not a white supremacist. Trump is not a fascist. He's going to move us closer to fascism. Supreme Court justices, at least some of the ones he appointed, have been mixed. They are good in terms of reining in some of the regulatory agencies, but no, let's say Chevron, right? All Chevron does is it doesn't rein in regulations. And it doesn't repeal any regulations. All Chevron does is say the burden of regulating is on Congress, not on the alphabet agencies. There's nothing in the Supreme Court ruling so far that has said you shouldn't regulate business or you should regulate businesses less. Nothing. All it says is if you want to regulate businesses, you got to do it the right way. You got to follow the right procedure. You got to respect the separation of powers. If you want to regulate businesses, you have to go through Congress. I mean, that's completely consistent. All you have to do is get enough people in Congress to be able to do your bidding, right? Get a majority in Congress to do your bidding. Now, I don't think Trump is capable of doing that. So Trump is not going to be one who's going to bring us the fascism. He is the one getting us ready for it. And by the way, one of the things Trump could do is, let's say there was a ruling by the Supreme Court that said your executive order, Trump, rounding up illegal immigrants and sending them back or sending them across the border into Mexico is unconstitutional. We strike it down. Now imagine if Trump says, I don't give a damn. I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep doing it. What happens in America then? Who steps in? If Trump ignores the Supreme Court, does Congress impeach him? But we know Congress won't. Republicans won't. So what happens? If Trump just says, I'm not going to pay attention to the Supreme Court. They're wrong. They're outside their purview. I'm going to continue throwing people out, rounding them up, putting them in camps, whatever it is. So you could have a constitutional crisis that it takes the form of fascist-like actions. Does the military step in to force the president to abide by the Constitution? But if Trump appoints all the people at the top of the military, will they? Will they? So a lot of questions about, how does this play out? And Trump is the first president who I think there's a chance, I'm not sure he will, but there's a chance, a very significant chance, that on a particular issue might tell the Supreme Court, to hell with you. I'm going to do it anyway. He has zero respect for the separation of powers, zero respect for the American system of government. He doesn't give a damn. So if he thinks he's holding all the cards and can get away with it, he would tell the Supreme Court to go to hell. So, and that's, again, you're getting a lot of misinformation from some people in the chat. Because, by the way, one of the things that Bannon said, I forgot to read, is he said, I'm not part of the media. I'm an activist. I'm a general leading a revolution. And that's the thing about the media, both on the left and the right, particularly on the far left and the far right. It's not about facts. It's not about reporting. It's 100% about motivating your troops. So a lot of the news that people claim to get from the far right is nothing but made up stuff in order to motivate them to go and fight. Lucinda, well, I consider myself an egoist since I was 12, and it didn't take long for me to encounter Rand when looking for similar views. Though I was more of a long-term hedonist than a rational egoist. Didn't read Rand till 16, though. Excellent. Excellent. James, conflict avoidance is conflict multiplied. Absolutely. Absolutely. When you try to avoid conflict, all you do is create more conflict. Much more conflict. James, would America tolerate running to bomb shelters all the time the way Israelis do? I don't know. I didn't think Americans would tolerate a lockdown, but they did. So it's very hard to tell what Americans would or wouldn't tolerate. Hopper Campbell, there's never going to be a third party. I see objectivists talking over both parties slowly over time, taking over both parties over time. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know how it evolves. But the reality is that there was a third party. It used to be the Whigs and the Democrats. And then some people split off in the Whigs and created the Republican Party, and soon enough the Whigs were gone. So I'm not sure that you'll never have a third party. M. Azan, what news sites and magazines do you read daily for news? Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Atlantic, Financial Times, Economist, any science magazine you follow. I read all of the above, plus Pirate Wire, Free Press, Dispatch, FoxNews.com, not the TV station, and anything else that comes up. Again, I've answered this question many times. I use Google News. I'm subscribed to a bunch of different Substacks. I try to scan. I read a lot of the MAGA. I get emails. I'm on email lists of the MAGA stuff. So I scan the MAGA stuff. So I try to read everything. I don't subscribe to any of the science magazines, but I subscribe to a news service that provides summaries of the key big scientific and engineering or biotech and tech AI innovations, and then I'll go to the original articles based on that. And sometimes I can't get in because of subscriptions, and, but I scan a lot of that. Apollo Zeus, when will it all start? When did it all start, the left U.S.? I don't know what you're talking about, Apollo Zeus. If you mean when did the left start taking over the U.S. culturally, well, I mean, end of the 19th century, it's very simple. Basically, when American universities wanted to become the best universities in the world, they went and hired a bunch of German professors and brought them to the United States, and they brought with them Kant, Hegel, and the rest of them. When rich Americans wanted their kids to get the best education in the world, they sent them to Europe, to Germany and France, where they got Kant, Hegel, Rousseau, and they brought back those ideas. So the elites in America have been infused with German and French rotten philosophy for 100 years now, and it's just expanded and grown and become bigger and bigger and more influential. Frank, is coveting stuff same as being second-handed? No, I mean, coveting stuff is wanting stuff. I don't know if coveting is desiring. Desiring is good. Desiring stuff is good. It's desiring somebody else's stuff. I mean, that's okay. You can desire somebody else's Ferrari as long as you're not envious of him for having the Ferrari. Jealousy is not a bad thing, and desiring somebody else's stuff, not that it's somebody else's, but that you want stuff like them. You covet their Ferrari, not that you're going to steal their Ferrari. It's that you want a Ferrari too. You covet their wife, not that you're going to take their wife. It's that you want a wife like theirs. Now, if it's only somebody else's, if you covet it because it's somebody else's, then pure second-handed, yes. But I don't know that that's what covet means. Maybe it does. I'm just not sure. Okay, Lucinda, thank you. Romantic Manifesto was the first Rand I read, and since I was always relatively honest in my anarchism and Trumpism were more because of lack of knowledge, I turned around to Objectivism shortly before reading The Fountainhead. Wow, that's amazing that, you know, all that happened from the Romantic Manifesto, and that was at age 17, so she's 19 now. That's great. Have you thought of attending the Ayn Rand University, taking classes at the Ayn Rand University? I mean, you're the perfect candidate for the Ayn Rand University. You should definitely look into that, Lucinda. And you should come to the Ayn Rand conference in Berlin in March. Ayn Rand conference in Berlin in March. Apollo Zeus, Ayn Rand, the immigration rules for the U.S. are ridiculous. Absolutely. Kabuta, should Fauci be prosecuted? No. Fauci didn't do anything deserving of prosecution. Trump did. If you're going to prosecute anybody for COVID, Trump should be prosecuted. And a big part of that is that Trump gave Fauci power that Fauci should have never had. Trump was the commander-in-chief. Trump was the president. Trump was the guy in charge. He made Fauci a big deal. Fauci was never supposed to run anything regarding COVID. It was supposed to be the CDC. It was Trump that decided to kick the CDC to the background. It was Trump that waited to the very last moment to take COVID seriously. It was Trump that kept distracting with ivermectin and bleach and all kinds of other nonsense. Trump is the guy who should be prosecuted. Now, he can't be because he's got immunity, because that was done in his official role of president. But Trump's response to COVID is exactly why he should never be president. Never, ever. Never, ever. The idea that Fauci is responsible for the COVID response, absolutely not. The Secretary of Health and Human Services, Trump's political machinations and the people whispering in his ear, his advisors, those are the people responsible for it. Those are the people responsible for it. Biden on COVID was better, much better. I mean, they were all terrible, but Biden was actually better than Trump on COVID. Did the Native Americans have their property rights infringed upon by the colonists? No, the Native Americans didn't have property rights. They didn't have the concept of property. They didn't have. I mean, some of them, maybe the ones who are more agricultural and more settled, did have their property rights violated. Certainly, like the Incas and the Mayans had their property rights violated, but nomadic tribes do not have property rights. Those who are settled, yes, their property rights were infringed upon by the colonists, no question. But that's a fraction of what is America, the area that was cultivated, fenced off, if you will, basically. Alexis, your favorite French dish? I don't know. God. Yeah, I don't know. I don't have the names of particular French dishes. I love good food. I love Tornado Rossini. I loved that when I was young. As I said, foie gras. Foie gras done really, really well with the right glazing, the right sauce. A good steak with the right kind of steak sauce, with the right kind of sauce is amazing. I'm blanking out, but there's a lot of good French food. A lot of good French food. Apollo Zeus, do you think sex is more satisfying if the goal is a pregnancy? No, I don't think so. I don't think so. I mean, I can imagine, but God, I'm trying to think back because I did have sex with the goal of pregnancy with one of my kids, before the birth of one of my kids. I can't remember it being more satisfying. No, I think it was great if the purpose was pregnancy. It was great if the purpose was not pregnancy. Sex generally is really, really good. Daniel Duffy, can you tell us the story where you almost threw up in the race car? Sure. I mean, it was in Las Vegas on a track. It was, 90 or 100 degrees. You have to wear this suit and a helmet, and you really have to get into this stuff. I wasn't driving the race car, which is part of the problem. I think if I was driving it, I wouldn't have gotten sick. A good friend of mine, some of you might know him, Terry Goodkind. Terry Goodkind was driving the race car. Terry Goodkind passed away a few years ago. Terry Goodkind, the novelist, was driving the race car. And we went around the track once, and I basically tapped him on the shoulder and said, if we continue, I'm going to throw up into this. You're wearing a mask. You're closed off. It's a little claustrophobic. And yeah, it was too much for me. I wish I was driving. I don't think I would have gotten sick driving. But all the equipment and everything, and in one of these small race cars, it's just, it's thrilling. It's fun. Much more fun driving it than being in somebody else's thing. But it was too hot and too much. Too much. Andrew, where are moderate Republicans going to find a home in the new political landscape, or are they going to be extinct? I don't know. That it's going to be a while before they're completely extinct. For now, they're in the Republican Party. But I think they're going to have to learn how to toe the line or they will just disappear. I mean, where's Paul Ryan right now? Remember, Paul Ryan is the last Republican, both as vice presidential candidate and as a Speaker of the House, to actually present budgets that cut spending. That cut, not just reduce the rate of growth, cut spending. He was the last politician in a position of significance in America to propose reforming Medicare. I mean, in many ways, he's the last politician worth voting for. And he's gone. He's disappeared. And he's not going to vote for Trump. And he's completely disappeared. He is the best, I mean, the cowardly best of the Republican Party, because he was a coward. But he was the best. And he's gone. The best the Republican Party has to offer, unfortunately. And he's gone. The better people are all gone already in the Republican Party. So very few left. Menace. Candace recently, quote, I'm not a flat earther, I'm not a round earther. Yeah, I just did. I showed the video of that on the show, Menace. Just rewind and you'll see it on the show earlier on. Lucinda, also watching Peacock's Understanding Objectivism lectures, got any bad intellectual baggage I still had with me at that point out for good. That's great. I mean, I think Scott should watch them as well. Maybe that can shake him up a little bit. I doubt it. I think he's gone. But you're young and honest, so it had the right kind of impact on you. Kabuta says, should Fauci be persecuted for financing the Wuhan gain-of-function research that created COVID? No. I mean, no. Funding the gain-of-function research was the government. It was part of government policy. He just did what was government policy. So he didn't violate any law. He didn't break a law by doing it. He did what the government had authorized him to do. And it's a good question. Should we ban gain-of-function research? Now, I think we should ban gain-of-function research in China. But given the relationship the U.S. had with China, particularly with regard to this bio stuff, Fauci didn't do anything out of the ordinary. He didn't fund anything that any other director of the entity he directed wouldn't have done. I mean, Fauci is just a convenient scapegoat for some people on the right because of the massive failure there was. They don't want to blame Trump. They don't want to blame the state, which is really... They want a person. They want somebody. And Fauci did a lot of stupid, bad things. So let's just latch onto him and make him out to be a criminal. But he's not. He's wrong. The U.S. should never have funded gain-of-function research in China. And by the way, Fauci didn't fund it directly. They funded it through this other entity whose name I forget now, who was the government just committed never to giving them money. But remember, this was a government program. This was government accepted. This was government. Fauci is just a guy who stepped into the breach because nobody else would, because Trump was so incompetent and pathetic. So he ran things and he made a lot of mistakes. A lot of mistakes. Partially because Trump gave him power that he shouldn't have given him. But that's on Trump. All right, guys. Thank you to all the super chatters. We did great today. Really, really, really appreciate it. I am going to go and get some dinner. I am hungry. Tomorrow, 2 p.m., usual time. We will do a 4th of July show, so there will be a show on Thursday. We'll do a show on America. What is America? Americanism, how to celebrate America, what we are celebrating on the 4th of July. What is the Declaration of Independence? What does it actually mean? We'll talk about that and why the Declaration of Independence needs to be the foundation of a new political movement that can save this country. I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, everybody. Thank you. Thank you again to Super Chatters. Really appreciate it.